Welcome back to One Winning Pod, where the Ravens managed to win in Cincinnati in overtime. And it was quite the roller coaster. I went to ESPN to see the win probability chart, and as one could expect, it was like we were winning, we were losing, and then it went like up, down, like a cardiac kid or something. And but we won, so I guess that's cool. And to talk about it, Chris couldn't make it tonight, so just me and Peter.
For a minute there, I thought you were going to introduce me as Chris. I was like,
yeah, for a minute there, I might have.
Oh, man. Dude, I mean, what a game, though. I mean, there's so much to take away from this game. I mean, it's great to get the division win on the road. It's a win that very easily could have been a loss. But I think we'd be saying the same thing for the Bengals if they had come out with the win in this game. A lot of not great things in the pass defense, but outside of that, I mean, really encouraging things for the offense. We always have this question of how is Lamar going to, rise to the occasion in these situations, because he hasn't been in them too many times in his career. And honestly, this feels like a game that, a lot of times over the past couple years, the Ravens wouldn't have won. So props to them. Very exciting game. If you're a casual fan, not really of either team. If you're a fan of either of these teams, it was exciting. It was as frustrating as it was exciting.
I'd agree with that. It was definitely stressful. I didn't like what it was doing to my body physically. And, it was one of those funny things. I got to watch it with correspondent K-Fish and the rest of our capstone team, Tibamba, Conrad, and Abdul. And man, we were like watching the game and like, just, we're experiencing it, man. Like, for lack of better words, like we're just like, wow, like this is crazy. So it was definitely a good game to watch with friends and not just be, by yourself watching on the couch. But at the same time, it kind of let me, we were having good conversation or whatever, and like I was like feel like I wasn't as tracking it as closely during the game. It was normal. Like I was like, wait a second, Rosengar was hurt. Like he was back in by the time I had noticed. Like I missed the 3 plays where he was hurt or whatever, because I don't think we really had the volume on. Like I was thinking back when I was like, actually, I don't think we had the volume on. I think we were just like watching it like muted. So, anyways, like it was like stuff like that. Like it was easy to miss. And going back on the rewatch, I was like, oh, Jones like had some appearances in there. I did notice that he was in there for the play to Likely. Like Stanley like took like 2 random plays off, which in the broadcast when I re-listened to the condensed version, at least I didn't hear why that happened. But yeah, it was just like, it was such a crazy game that felt like so much happened. There was just so much game. And looking back at the game book, 11 possessions in normal, time before even overtime, which is kind of high, right? Kind of indicative of how much football there was between the quick scores or the, turnover or whatever. So definitely a very high pace and hectic game with lots to talk about.
Without a doubt. And, there's plenty we're going to want to talk about with the offense, but I think we do need to start with the defense because, look, I mean, I said it in the preview. I was expecting the Cincinnati Bengals to come out here and try and hit a lot of big plays. I thought that for the Ravens to win, they were going to have to keep pace because the Bengals are going to try a lot of things through the air, and trying to stop an offense that has Jamar Chase and T. Higgins as the top 2 playmakers. I mean, a little bit of a difference there than trying to stop an offense with Khalil Shakir and Dalton Kincaid as the top, playmakers. I like both those players, but they're not Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, right? I think we can all agree with that. But I was not expecting it to get this out of hand. I thought that the ceiling for this game is going to be something like 28-27 between these two teams. And to see the Bengals get those big plays. I mean, look, they're not slouch players getting those big plays against your defense, but still, I mean, the Ravens really pride themselves in being able to stop these guys. So, you got to tip your hat to the Bengals, but it was frustrating seeing all those big plays.
Unacceptable. I feel like this team was built specifically to beat the Bengals. You look at how invested the secondary has been, right? Between obviously Marlon was a first round pick a long time ago, all pro, got the contract. Wiggins, top pick, quite talented. Stevens has ascended and super physical play, and is going to be paid really well after this season. Marcus Williams, he hasn't quite been himself, and we'll talk about how he has been exposed. And Kyle Hamilton, excellent player. Very disappointing to see how many points were scored and how easily they were thrown on this game, because it wasn't like, oh man, like the running game was pretty effective too. They were off balance. Like, well, you did a pretty decent job stopping the run. Also, they weren't really trying to run, and they were kind of going right at us, and you felt like they were going out of strength, but it turned out to be a weakness. And one of the biggest things I kind of took away from watching this game is the coverage rules, man, are still just not there. Like, they are not fully, I don't know if what's changed year over year or what communication, if it's just like one player, because I mean, like, that's the thing that's kind of making me scratch my head so much about Williams, is like he seems confused about where he needs to be. And it's like, bro, you've been here. Like, you've played well in this offense or in this defense before. Like, what's different? So I'm wondering what's changed, and it is a little concerning and something I'm going to keep an eye on, because I feel like there's too much talent there for the way that they played in this game. And I really just don't want to see it again. We do play the Bengals again on Thursday night, which will be its own unique challenge on the short week, and all that stuff. But it's funny. Like, remember we talked about the Cowboys game? It was like, kind of felt like a loss. It's like, in a way, this kind of felt like a loss too. Like some people thought it was a loss before it wasn't. And, just like, I'm really concerned about the secondary part. Like, I never want to see our offense have to do what they did. I appreciate that they did it, but like the defense should be better than that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have a lot of different takes on that, actually.
Okay.
I think this game felt resoundingly like a win. And the reason I say that is because, look, I mean, you have to give credit to a team for fighting back. And yeah, a lot didn't go right for the defense. And a lot of things on the offense, they weren't perfect. And we'll talk about that too. The reason they were in the hole was some because of that too. But in the NFL, man, you got to have a short memory. And if you have mistakes, all right, on to the next play. And I think that's what the defense did to force a turnover there at the end of that game. Thankfully, that wasn't called a penalty. I don't think it was a penalty, but we've seen, less aggressive plays than that be called before. So for Marlon to get that pick in there, this team never quit. And you had so many players, I think, step up and do things that, we've been asking for them to do. And look, I'm not happy that the defense gave up these big plays, but I don't think you can call it a failure and say it absolutely can't happen when on the opposite side of the football, you have one of the best passing attacks in the NFL going against you. I mean, even the 2000 Ravens defense had some games where, they got gashed. That secondary got gashed by Jacksonville. That secondary got gashed by Vinny Testaverde and the Jets. I mean, even to the best defenses, games like that are going to happen. And you had a team that was desperate to get a win. Desperate. They did not want to go 1-4, without a doubt. I mean, Cincinnati has to be looking at this and like that was their season on the line. I mean, we'll see. That's going to be incredibly hard for them to call back out of. So, I do see what you're seeing with Marcus Williams. I will say on the plays, every play that I had a chance to see where I was just like, I think Marcus Williams might be, out of position more, then my eyes kind of, went over a little bit to Eddie Jackson. I think is still the one who's continuing to have the most difficulty with this defense, particularly on the Jamar Chase touchdown right before the end of half. I mean, Marcus Williams got turned around. He had a bad angle, but Jackson he got fooled, and he should have been back there defending that as well. So, yeah. I mean,
well, Peter,
things
I
got to
remember
get
we
changed
talked
in the secondary, but yeah, I also think you got to just tip your cap to the Bengals. They're an absolutely great team. He had an amazing offense against amazing defense.
Yeah. I mean, I remember we were talking as we walked through Opassi after the Bills game, how when people in the lineup, you're not expecting them to hit well. You're like, well, I have to change my approach, right? Maybe that's what's going on with Williams. He's like, this Jackson guy can't do it. Like I'm going to change my approach. And he's trying to do too much and then getting, out of position as well or whatever. So I don't know. That's an interesting. I agree with you. Like I think both of them are underperforming, and it could be something like Eddie's playing. I would also agree probably Eddie's playing a little bit worse. I think Williams is playing maybe like worse than expectation. Like the delta is a little bit bigger, but the actual like worst player is probably A. Jackson. One of the things that like kind of blew my mind, and I kind of saw it. I hate when football is like slow motion for you sometimes, but that house call on the wide receiver screen where you have like we just got caught with our pants down. We were in the wrong defensive formation. Like Harrison was covering a wide receiver. Rowe was the closest person to chase, but like arguably no one was even on him. And then they were man to man. So like once it was blocked up well, and then Williams was the last man, like he had to tackle Chase. Like good luck, and literally good luck to any player in the NFL to make that tackle. And then he was off to the races. And I was just like, man, like I know it was really bang bang because like I said, it was kind of slow motion for me when I saw it. I was like, this looks weird. Like something looks wrong. But like, obviously I can't call timeout. Like who could have called timeout there and be like, whoa, like this? I was just like, oh man, like how did this happen? Like we kind of talked about it a lot where we're seeing linebackers covered up or, trying to cover wide receivers, and we think that's a bad idea. So I'm just, I don't want to keep seeing this.
Yeah. I mean, it was the wrong alignment 100%. Part of me wonders, I think that's part of, this is speculation here, right? But, that's part of the mentality of the Ravens. It's just like, we can go with all our guys, right? We can stop anyone. So, maybe there was thought of calling a timeout there, but maybe there was a slight hesitation because you're like, okay, well, this is first down in a tight game, right? That's ideally that's not the spot where you want to burn a timeout. Now, of course, in retrospect, you're like, well, why didn't you save the 70
Oh, no, I know. It's a tough, I agree. It's a tough spot to be in.
Yeah.
And like, if you looked at it, they were like all aggressively on the line. It just seemed like a really aggressive play on the 30-yard line, first down. Now, granted, there were some flash plays that I would love to bring up. This is what gives me like, hope and optimism. Like the defense definitely showed why we think they're great in various plays in this game. For instance, that sack by Matabike at the end of the game on the first down. I mean, it didn't win us the game, but it gave us the opportunity to win the game, right? Because it put them in such a bad game script, 2nd and 17. It just completely put on the head like how they were going to approach things. They took like one more shot, it was incomplete, and they're like, all right, I guess we're going to run the ball. So like, time goes out. Like we're not even going to try to score here. So that was a huge game-changing play. And of course, you had the interception, game-changing play. And there's plenty more. I mean, there was a lot of big plays on like 3rd and short that were either sacks or stops, and resulted in a punt rather than points. So I definitely like, even though they gave up 36 points allowed, they had a lot of big flashes too, and reminded you of like they're a good defense, and they got the stops like that they quote unquote needed, right? Like in the game script of like, okay, it's going back and forth, it's a shootout. I would argue they did make actual plays, right? Where the Bengals did not. And it is super reassuring, like you're saying, Peter, like we really haven't seen this team do that because they're not really in the position to do it often. And usually when they're behind, they lose. So the fact that they came back, they won, they made the plays, that did feel really good. So I guess like, yeah, I guess like, I mean, it does feel like a win. It's just like, man, like it was so close to feeling like an L that like, I still remember those feelings. Kind of like Harbaugh said, we were in a dark place.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. And it's really hard to say if it's definitively a win, right? I understand what you're saying. Cause both teams lucked out at the end of the game. It was like neither offense wanted to clamp down and win this game. Burrow throws a pick, Lamar fumbles a ball, Bengals miss a kick. It's just like, but I think also that's just kind of what happens at the end of those games, right? You're still not that deep into the year, like you said, 11 possessions for each side before the end of regulation. Like I think guys were just gassed at the end there.
Oh, they were. That's been a huge talking point in all the like postseason or like the press conference afterwards and the conference today. Like it was like it's such a hardballism, like the opportunity of fatigue. Like Yeah, I guess so. He's like, we love, experiencing the fatigue and like persevering. And I'm like, yeah, I guess so.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, they gave a game ball to the conditioning coach, right? Because like it kind of felt like it was a game of like us outlasting them. And I mean, yeah, the Henry run, you could argue like, that was a dagger. Everyone talks about how Henry is like the most conditioned guy, right? And he's able to like hit a top speed on the last play. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I mean, he's an absolute freak. And I guess we could jump over and talk about him and get back to some more things on the defense if we want later. But I mean, it's just another week where we're looking at Derrick Henry and he's continuing, at least for me, to smash expectations. And he didn't even have, I mean, the game, 2 games he had the previous 2 weeks, obviously off the charts, incredible games. And this one, the numbers don't look as great, but just still, I think you got to commend the Ravens for continuing to give him carries throughout the game, continuing to get chunk yards and wear down the defense. And then eventually the dam breaks and you get what you got at the end of there in overtime, where he was just able to do that big run that very nearly scored a touchdown, but won the game for them. Immediately they went and just, first down. All right, just send Tucker out there. We got the chip shot. Let's go. Go home. That was excellent to see. And just, I continue to be in awe of this guy. Everyone's always known that Derrick Henry's great. I knew Derrick Henry was great, but his rise coincided with, the delay of the Lamar empire. So, I always in the back of my mind, I was like, he's not that great. He's overrated, F the Titans. But
well, the whole like, you run him into a brick wall until the fourth quarter and everyone's tired and he's not. And then he starts, feasting. That was always the narrative. And like what we're seeing is maybe the Titans couldn't block, and like that's what they needed. But because we're able to block, he can just be a beast the whole game. But he's obviously good. He's a weird runner to watch sometimes. Although like part of me now that I've seen more of him, I feel like when I used to watch him, and again maybe it could be the offensive line, it kind of felt like he couldn't make too much for himself at the first level. He had to get to level 2 and level 3 to like really start making hay. But now I feel like he's more shifty than you give him credit for in all levels. So yeah, he's a good piece, man. And that read option with him is basically as advertised. So it is fun. Like this is what we were all talking about. Like, oh, this could be a fun offense with them, and it is. I really do think it is, and I think they're figuring it out. And we're seeing like, I don't want to get too deep in the offense, but here we go. Like, we're seeing like a lot of heavies. Like, I would be curious to see if we're like, a historically heavy team again this year, using all our tight ends in this game. They all ate, and had big plays and touchdowns or whatever. Like. It was a crazy game for tight ends. I think this might be like the best. Probably actually not. It's not enough yards, but like 3 touchdowns for your tight ends and over 100 yards receiving is like unheard of, right? Like that's such a cool thing. I'm sure it's happened before with like Gronk and Hernandez, but it was pretty special.
Well, with 3 tight ends though, I mean we'd have to do some digging.
Yeah, that's
there.
true. Like with 3 tight ends, 3 tight ends involved, maybe not, but yeah. It's cool. It's a different offense, right? Yeah.
Well, and I think what was really encouraging about this offense is, this is the type of offense the Ravens have been running since Lamar took over. Well, heavy target share to the tight ends, run a ton with Lamar and run a ton with the running backs, and it's unconventional, right? And it looks really, that offense has always looked really great when the Ravens are always able to jump out to a big lead and then just kind of coast on the defense and just keep putting up big points via the ground game. But I think the narrative has always been, well, that type of offense, you're not going to win too many shootouts with it. Well, look what the Ravens just did, in this game. And of course, the wide receivers were involved as well. We saw Zay Flowers. I almost had my bold prediction. He came 4 yards short of his career high.
I looked into it, and it's like he had his regular season high it's only in the postseason that he's had more.
I know.
By 4 yards.
But I
Yeah.
specifically called out that game in the bold prediction of saying what he had to beat. So, yeah, but man, Zay Flowers, I mean, he's had big games in every single matchup against Cincinnati. It really matches up really well against them. But Tylan Wallace had some clutch catches there at the end of the game. Bateman continues to look like a solid member of the offense. He's off to a much better start than he was last year. Still probably not exactly what we've envisioned, but much better. Yeah, but I mean, once again, I mean, Mark Andrews had some catches today. He started to look good. Charlie Kolar, the big fat white guy from his own quote, got his big long reception and the second touchdown of his career. Isaiah Likely got 2 touchdowns. Like, it's incredibly encouraging to see the Ravens, put up 41 points in a game when they absolutely needed to put up those points in an unconventional manner. I mean, if they're able to do that, that throws defenses off.
It is so goofy. The 3-13-2 for Likely.
It is really.
That was probably going to distort his touchdowns per yards number for the rest of the year. So bonkers. But yeah, you know what I really enjoyed though? Not only I think Flowers shows up big against the Bengals because we've needed to actually, pass and score. It seems like whenever called upon, Flowers really has been that dude and be able to produce at a high level. It's really just all about volume and opportunity downfield, like how many times we actually give him some air yards. And then Bateman, man, I got really encouraged. Those 2 passes to him in high leverage, third down, gotta have it situations, and him making spectacular catches. It felt like the trust between him and Lamar has increased, and the output of this game, extended that further. So it gets me a little hot and bothered to think if Bateman actually can be a part of this offense, because we're talking about, Flowers has produced. I think Andrews showed that he still has, something in the tank. Obviously, Likely is just a total baller. And then Kohler's just been a pleasant surprise. I don't know if it's just right place at the right time or what, but Harbaugh made a good point. Coming out of college, he was known as a receiving tight end, right? But he had the body size to be a good blocker, and he's put a lot of work in, and now he is considered a blocker as well. And just kind of validates, in my opinion, too. And it's pretty clear by the way the Ravens have been drafting them, but that is 110% of the way to develop a tight end in today's NFL. You got to start with somebody who can catch the ball and has a threat there, and then you can build the blocking. I mean, look at Kohler, look at Likely. They're great examples of that. And I just feel like you can't inject athleticism and pass catching into the blocking tight end, right? So, and also just I think I always just enjoy the beauty of them, being lead blockers and stuff, and just running downfield in parallel. So I'm thrilled that it's working out. It's just another I don't know what came first, right? Awesome tight ends in Baltimore making me a fan of the tight end position, or just liking the tight end position and just happening to have good ones in Maryland. So I do really enjoy watching some good tight ends play, and like we said, we have 3 of them, and it's a really fun offense.
I mean, I'm gonna throw a guess out there that it's the former. I mean, because the first 2 years we were really watching the Ravens, their leading receiver was a tight end, and then he got replaced for another tight end, and then it became option 1B in the offense after they signed Derek Mason. And it really wasn't till 2009 until the tight end became the third receiving option, and even then, I think that was, you would say, Ray Rice was option number 2. So even not even 2 wide receivers.
It was brief because Pitta was a big guy, at that time. So
right, yeah. So still a tight end, right? We had
good tight ends.
We had a little bit in there where you had Bolden and Mason, so 2 wide receivers to throw to over to tight end. But yeah, I mean, the Ravens know what they're doing here. With drafting tight ends, very few of them have they drafted and gotten absolutely nothing out of. Even guys that they've drafted, only here for a tiny bit. Think of gonna throw out a really obscure name there, but Quinn Subnewski in 2007 only played 1 year. Played a lot of snaps when Todd Heap was injured that year and caught passes. doesn't sound like a lot, but we're talking about the 2007 Ravens offense. So,
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I'm excited that Kolar is getting involved. He had that big catch against Dallas. He had a big catch here. I think he's always shown talent. It's just that his career got off to a rocky start with the sports hernia injury, to start his rookie year. Kind of got lost in the fold last year, but that was kind of the Todd Monken offense, right? The only reason Isaiah Likely started getting looks was because Mark Andrews got hurt, So I'm really liking that we're seeing that they're getting him more involved because he has skills. I don't know if I'm ready to say like he's a guy who could be a starter in the league. I mean, likely, I think we're all fully believe that he is, truly a starting level caliber tight end along there with Mark Andrews. But he's certainly a guy who can give them snaps as far as blocking. He's improved that, and he's showing that he's a receiving threat too. So, look, it's a good thing for the Ravens to continue to have these guys that can catch the ball. Man, you got him and Tylan Wallace making some catches and just adding to the depth here as far as capable guys.
Dude, watch this space with Tylan Wallace. I said it during camp that he looked really good. He's been getting snaps. And the way it was being proportioned before was he was getting snaps and run plays primarily because he's a really good blocker. And we saw it again in this game when he on the big Henry run, he was one of the key blocks to springing that. And then he had those 2 good catches over the middle. I think he could be wide receiver 3 in a hurry. Like, I feel like he might supplant Aguilar just because I think he's a little bit more multiple. He's been proven over the middle of the field, which Aguilar also does, but I think the blocking is another level higher. And a good way to redeem himself after that special teams gaffe that really sapped a lot of momentum. By not receiving that punt, the ball got to the 2, then the safety happened immediately after. But he bounced right back. He had those 2 big catches and that big block, and Harbaugh pointed that out. So, yeah, I'm really liking what we're seeing there. So it makes me excited because, we drafted Walker and thought, there's opportunity. We liked what Aguilar brought to the table, but it didn't feel insurmountable for somebody to come in and play better. But it turns out it might be Tylan Wallace, and it's been pretty clear since camp.
Yeah, I think another thing to look at there, Deontay Hardy, as far as I could tell, you can correct me if I'm wrong, was a healthy scratch this week.
Something came up apparently, but I don't know those details. They brought it up in the press conference to Harbaugh, and he's like, "Yeah, something came up at the end of the week. That happens sometimes." So I think maybe he tweaked something. But what a blessing, honestly. I think it's why we were able to elevate Ngakoue, honestly, right? Like,
right, sure.
I don't know if we need him, right? Like, if he's literally just a specialized returner, we have Tylan. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like it makes it a little bit more multiple. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, no, I agree with you. I didn't understand the signing. I thought that last year Wallace showed that was more than capable of handling, the kick returner duties. And, Hardy, he's had a solid career as a special teamer, I guess. Hasn't really.
They were in over their skis about the dynamic kickoff. Like, I think that was just a miss on their end of thinking like it was going to be a bigger part of the game than it's really turned out to be. So yeah, I mean, I just think it's one of those things. Like, is he worth a roster spot for that? I do think he'll be back though. I fully suspect. I don't think it'll last like this, but we'll see. We'll see what they ended up doing with him. But it is interesting, and it's good to know that like we don't absolutely need him.
Yeah, I mean, it's just Wallace is a guy who it just feels like it's his time, right? It's not his time now. When is it going to be? And again, not a guy that I'm expecting to, ever be a huge part of this offense, but certainly he can, like you're saying, I fully agree. He can do what Aguilar's doing, right now.
I think he'd be a very savvy extension by EDC at this point. If you can get for like $2 to $3 million a year, I think he'd be a really a good asset to have. Yeah. So I guess we'll see. It's exciting that he's getting to this place. Another thing that's exciting too, man, is I think the offensive line is cooking a little bit. Obviously, there's some plays I want back, but just another good game, I think, for the offensive line, all things considered. I will say, though, man, Lamar bails out this line so much. Sometimes I wonder, like, would any other quarterback be okay behind this line? But I do think that was part of the calculus, right? I truly do think part of the calculus is like, well, if Lamar Jackson's back there, he can evade certain kinds of pressures, right? There's certain things that are non-negotiable. You don't want, free runner at him, blindside hits, etc. But if it's a little bit of pressure coming from one side and he has to navigate the pocket, there's no one better in the league.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I agree with that. It's really hard to look at this line and grade it like, oh, how would a pocket passer perform back there? But that's not what they're planning for. That's never what they're planning for. They always have mobile quarterbacks back behind him. So it just hasn't been the focus. But yeah, I mean, I continue to have to say it because it just felt like so many people. I gotta take my victory lap. So many people were running Ronnie out of town. They were running my boy Ronnie Stanley out of town. And, going into the season, I was like, look, I can't guarantee it, but I have a feeling, based on what I saw in the postseason, particularly the game against Houston, that if he has a good healthy offseason, he can be in here and play very well. I don't know about if we're ever going to see 2019 Stanley again, but very well. And to date, I mean, he had another great game today. I keep saying today, like the game happened today, but recording this Monday night. Particularly in pass protection, really, holding his ground very well against some pretty talented, linemen they have there in Cincinnati. He looks like the best version we've seen of this guy in quite some time. And what we've seen in years past is he'd have good stretches, and really when I'm saying good stretches, it was like a good game here and there, and then it would be back to a lot of meh and then a lot of bad. But every game this year, he's come to the table and played very well, and that's been huge, I think, for this line, and has to be something we really look at when you're looking at how this unit has progressed and gotten better as the season has gone along, and hopefully continues to progress as we keep going.
It's a super high value thing, and it does make you wonder if EDC did the right thing, kind of messing with the contract and losing next year's availability. I think that leads them in a very interesting spot. I kind of want to go back and look what the previous contract would have been, and like, you know what I mean? Like, will we have taken it at this point? But yeah, I think a lot of good things happened. As you mentioned, in the playoffs, he looked better, and it was really reassuring. But, it was a small sample. And I remember you saying that. And then this offseason seemed really special for him. As you mentioned, he was fully healthy for the first time in a while. And as he kind of revealed on the lounge, he went into this for lack of better words, like therapy, right? Mm-hmm. Like he talked to like a performance coach about regaining confidence, because he was kind of trying to talk. He said he was trying to talk it into existence. Like, I'm back, I'm good, I'm healthy, but he didn't fully believe it, or it wasn't manifesting on the field yet. But then he kind of started feeling more confident in himself, like that he really was starting to get back where he needed to be, and all that good stuff. And yeah, I mean, listen to his own words better than my summary of a thing I listened to 2 or 3 weeks ago. But it kind of did seem like something more spiritual in a way almost happened this offseason as well for him, and helped him get back to the place that he was once at, both physically and mentally.
Yeah. I mean, that's awesome. And I think it makes a lot of sense too. It's so, we can't put ourselves in the position of these guys, right? I mean, even us listening here, everyone has had some setback in something they've done before, maybe even in sports with an injury. But to have to go through the injuries that he did have, and then have to basically accept the fact that, I mean, his body is never going to be what it was. Even not just because of the injury, because of age as well, right?
But we're 32 or whatever it is now, and we talk about how our bodies aren't quite the same. They're athletes. Yeah, no, of course they're going to feel it.
Exactly, yeah. So he's got the effects of aging, plus on top of just everything that happened with that injury. Yeah, it completely makes sense to me that you could really struggle in that situation to just doubt yourself, because your body's just not the same as what got you to that spot. But yeah, I mean, really happy for him. I hope it continues. He's a guy that, he's an offensive lineman. So I feel like, we never really know those guys too well, with rare exception. But he's always seemed like a guy who's been a great teammate, has never, you know, done anything to suggest that he's not, and just no reason not to root for the guy, in my opinion. So great to see that. And continued good play from the right side of the line. Folele and Rosengarten, yeah, did they make some mess ups in the game? Sure. Would you love to see that get cleaned up? Sure, but there's time before the playoffs,
Yeah.
And I think that's the most important thing, because I mean, there's some things like on the safety, I mean, Rosengarten, that was probably his fault. He was probably supposed to block that, rather than blocking no one. I would guess. I would guess that was the play call. But in the playoffs, as that happens, that's not great. But I think you see way more good out of him and Folele right now than bad. And they continue to get these reps. I think those mistakes are gonna keep getting cut down. And so, in the long term, I think we're gonna see some good returns there.
I guess the last question I'll ask you before we go into MVPs is...
Oh, no, we're not...
man. No, you're... I literally scrolled and I was like, oh, wait, no, we got something else to talk about. Maybe one of our MVPs. But I want to ask you real quick about the offensive line.
Okay.
Right? McCary's been playing well. Voorhees may or may not be healthy, this week.
Yeah.
Sound like in the press conference, like this week might be in play, if not next week, kind of thing. Like, he's getting close. Do you upset the apple cart? Or, you don't put it back in?
Oh, I didn't even need to finish the question. No, I mean, I think Voorhees has good potential. But I forget if I said it on this show or when we were talking offline one time. Like, it never seemed ideal to me for us to throw Voorhees into the starting lineup. Yeah. I think that would have been the biggest question for me on this way this offensive line came out, if not for the fact that Folele started at right guard and Perry at right tackle. I think that took away all my attention and all my talk about what are we doing with the offensive line there when that came out, then with Voorhees at left guard. Yeah, he just looks like a guy who's not ready yet, and it's not shocking in my opinion. He missed all of last year. He's coming back from injury. I think that he shows some potential, but it might not be till year 3 or 4, right? McCary's a vet. Rosengarten is a top prospect. Voorhees wasn't, so it makes more sense for him to play right now. And Folele is growing into this role, for better or for worse. And
so grown.
I know, right? It's like, can he grow anymore? Will there be gaps for Henry to run through? But yeah, I mean, that's my opinion. I think the unit's doing very well right now. Just keep it as is.
Harbaugh kind of said something similar too. He was like, "Yeah, they're playing quite well right now. We'll have to see." Yeah, he's like, he clearly doesn't want to put himself in a corner one way or the other, but I think he acknowledges it's a tough decision. All right, why don't you talk about Tucker?
Oh, actually, well, before Tucker, man. I mean, look, man, I get it. This is week in, week out, but Lamar Jackson, man. Lamar Jackson. He's been doing this so much that we just don't appreciate it, I think. I think we've just become completely numb to how freaking incredible this man is at the position of quarterback. And it's just, I mean, 4 touchdown passes, 350 yards. And that last touchdown pass to Likely, I mean, he's made that play before, right? He did against Cleveland. He did something similar in another game that I'm forgetting. But I think just the fact that he was able to make all those plays in a game where we absolutely needed him to. And we don't always need him to. And I think that's another reason why we forget to talk about him, because we're like, this team is so balanced all over the place that they don't necessarily need the MVP of the league to win in a lot of weeks, Just give it to Henry, or just let the defense
last
shut
week,
down Josh Allen.
Last week was pretty low key for him.
It was, yeah. But this win was 100% about Lamar Jackson and about Justin Tucker, like you're saying, man. And man, is he back. Dude, that kick was expert. Very few kickers in the NFL, I think, make that kick. Just the way he hit that to perfectly get the wind and get that right down in between the middle of the uprights. And man, did you see the look on his face after he made that kick? I have seen very few men be that dialed, locked in. Man, those eyes. He is back, baby. He is back.
Well, and like the reporting has said, he kind of went over to Harbaugh right after that and like got in his personal space and screamed at him like, "Let's go win this game." Yeah, it was a big kick. It was funny, you know. Again, kind of talking about how I was in that group atmosphere watching the game. For whatever reason, it was more comforting, right? If I was watching this by myself, I've been like, my nails might have been gone. But there, I felt like there was this calm. There was like this comfort. We were like, we've all seen this before, you know? We've all seen him do it before. And like, we kind of all together felt that exhale with the make. But yeah, man, Lamar Jackson's kind of ridiculous. That touchdown pass likely where he stiff arms twice, I imagine is like something being shown on SportsCenter and all that good stuff. And it's like, this is a ridiculous play. But like, I've seen that so many times. Like everyone's acting like, "Oh, I've never seen that before." You have, and he passed it to likely. It was last year. He's done very similar things before, actually. And like, yeah, that's why you get numb to it. It's like, yeah, like he's done this before, but it's still special. And a lot of people are giving him credit that he's the best player in the league, and it's like really kind of weird. It's a weird argument to have. There's a lot of like really great players in the league, but he does things that no one else does, right? Like even if you want to say Mahomes is, you know, super special with all his, you know, winning. I mean, he is. Yeah, he makes crazy plays too. But like Lamar does things in ways that only Lamar does. You know, just like Mahomes has like some crazy things that only Mahomes does, right? Like they're both just really special players, and we're getting to see them at the same time.
The only thing that Mahomes does that Lamar doesn't is, well, should say hasn't to date, is win rings. And there's no doubt in my mind that Lamar will eventually do that. So.
Hope so. It'd be really depressing if he didn't, given like how prolific his career's been.
So MVP is Lamar. This is a week where you give Lamar the MVP, I think. And that's, sure. I'm just going to jump in and do it, and you can give yours.
I mean, I feel like it has to be Tucker. You know, I've been sounding the alarm early and often last year. Just because I think, you know, I've been worried about his demise for too long. You know, he's getting up there in age and like the troubles that would bring. But so back, you know, he's right back there. I think he is not peak form anymore, but that's okay because he's still pretty darn good. So I give it to Tucker, man. That was a huge win. And then of course, like he actually won the game, so that was good too. So following up, we got a Commanders fan in the house, who I believe is going to be coming to the game with us. Is that correct, KJ?
Yes, that is the plan now. I don't actually know which of your crew is going or not going. I know Chris isn't able to make it.
Oh, then yeah, that's it then. You're taking Chris's seat.
Oh, okay. I thought Alex was also coming.
There's an extra seat.
I see. All right.
Yeah.
Great work. We figured it out. Yes, very excited to be able to actually come to the game. I was looking up tickets, and they are pricey. So, you know,
it's out of control,
dude. It's a hot commodity now. You know, people aren't going just to see Lamar anymore. They're going to see Jaden and watch, you know, two, I mean, not clones of each other, but I mean, maybe the two closest quarterbacks in their style of play right now in the NFL play each other. So it should be exciting. I think that's why people want to go, and that's why Section 500 is $350 right now.
That's it. I saw in our section there was like one that was like $550 or something.
I mean, I only checked like last night and this morning.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, he sent the screenshot, and I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Like, I remember how much it was to go to the actual AFC Championship game, right? Like, It was kind of close. Yeah.
Even the Browns game, the Commanders-Browns game that just happened, I did look just for fun because I was curious what the difference would be. And I think you could get, you know, an upper deck seat for, I don't know, $70 or something. So it's a wild difference. You're paying that Jaden Lamar tax.
That's nuts. Hey, man. Well, I was excited about him coming out of school. You guys got him. I thought that was a great selection, and he's looked really pro-ready. Just to jump right into it, one of the better deep ball throwers in the league already, has good touch on that. And one of the things that we didn't talk about the defense last week for the Ravens is that Burrow went 5 for 6 for passes of over 15 yards in the air. Makes me a little scared with guys like Scary Terry there, who apparently, as the notes say, is actually scary now. So, yeah, I definitely think this could be a challenging game, more challenging than maybe people thought going into the season. But yeah, what do you think, man? How do you think this is going to line up?
I mean, a lot of what you said makes sense. This is something where, 4 years ago when we did this, I was like, zero confidence in the Commanders or football team or whatever they were being able to pull out a win. And now it's an environment where, you watch these games and you say, okay, are they going to get the 30 points today? Probably. And you've just never, ever, or at least I've never, ever thought that in my life as a Washington fan. So, watching some of the plays, hitting Terry and De'Ami Brown, 50, 55-yard passes in the air, just kind of dropping it in a bucket. It's impressive to see. And frankly, something we haven't seen in a very long time. So he throws it and you almost expect it to be, 3 to 5 yards too long, because that's what you're used to seeing. And it's right there for the receivers. I know the first couple of games, people were a little concerned, especially the preseason as well. Cliff, kind of playing his ADOT, it's like 3 yards or something, just throwing these little dinks and dunks and screens. And then the last couple of weeks, it's opened up a lot more. So it's good to see that when he is, slinging the ball downfield, it is with accuracy. A little bit less efficient this last game, but, it was like completion percentages of 87 and 90% the other two games. I think breaking rookie record for one of those completion percentages. But I think it's just exciting to see. The other thing I wanted to bring up too is, you have Terry McLaurin, you have Brian Robinson. Eckler looks like rejuvenated running back compared to what he was last year, and you have Zach Ertz as the veteran tight end. But Olamide Zaccheaus, De'Ami Brown, Luke McCaffrey, not necessarily. I mean, Luke McCaffrey is a rookie, but no one was clamoring to pick up Olamide Zaccheaus, off the waiver wire and things like that. So or Noah Brown as well, right? So watching him make some of these wide receivers relevant in some of these situations has been exciting to see. I'm a realist. I know this isn't going to last all season, or, you can't keep up this level of efficiency all season, but for now, it's just exciting that it can even happen, and that, 24 points almost feels like a foregone conclusion watching them play right now. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's been the most impressive thing, because I remember, all the way back in week one, there were flashes in that game against the Buccaneers. I mean, you guys lost that game. So it's your only loss so far this season. And after that, 2 close games, and then, really beating both the Cardinals and the Browns big. The Browns, we know, aren't, that great a team, but still, I think that's what's been most surprising, is just how quickly this has happened. And I think that it's really caught the rest of the league by surprise. And, you guys are 4-1, but I feel like you don't have the respect yet of what a 4-1 team at this point usually would have. But I mean, with what he's doing right now, obviously, yeah, like you're saying, the league's going to adjust. They're going to take away some of the things he's having success with, but I mean, if he adjusts, you guys are already looking like a team that has a shot at the postseason, if not the division title for the NFC East.
Yeah, it's just like you said, even just saying those words out loud feels scary, because it's not something that we're used to experiencing. Last season was rocky, new ownership coming in, but just even speaking from that perspective, people have been really happy with Josh Harris and the ownership group, really just doing all the things that Dan Snyder wouldn't, like, I don't know, fixing basic plumbing and ripping up the old awful practice field that never got used. But like you said, going back to football, just the fact that he looks so comfortable, right, when he's back there, and he kind of sidesteps and then he'll just take off, and it looks Lamar-esque, not to say that he is as good as Lamar Jackson. He obviously has a ways to go, or, time to prove that, but the way he's able to just kind of, all right, do 1, 2, 3 reads, and then he's like, all right, well, I'll just run for 13 yards, right, and just kind of slide, hopefully, get out of bounds, hopefully, because everyone watching it just has flashbacks of RG3, the last exciting quarterback we had. I know, I was going to bring up, I said about Eckler looking good, Brian Robinson, not so great this last game, but just having that, the threat of the running from them as well. really helps open up the game. The defense is not where you want it to be, but it could frankly be worse. I think they've looked a little bit better the past two games. Obviously, holding the Cardinals to, I forgot exactly what it was, 14 or something like that, was definitely more impressive. Like you said, the Browns are not good. Deshaun Watson is not good. He does not look like an NFL quarterback. The fact that they didn't re-sign Flacco is criminal, in my opinion, when you see them now, because they could be a playoff team possibly. But I think the defensive lines looked a little bit better. Frankie Louvu had like 2.5 sacks his last game against Cleveland. He looks for real, the linebacker. Payne and Allen are coming on a little bit more as the season's gone on. They had a really slow start. People were kind of concerned with that. The secondary is the secondary. It can be had. I don't think, there's no, I guess, like scary playmakers or shutdown corners or anything of that nature. But I think if it's one of those things where they can at least try to stay middle of the pack defensive wise, they at least have a shot, right? They have a shot to win some games and win way more games than anyone thought. I think their over under was 5.5 or 6.5 coming into the season. So I'll at least make a little bit of money on that. I know you had a note in here about Emmanuel Forbes. Yeah, he has not looked like the first round pick that everyone was hoping he would be. I know he played in just 4 snaps against the Browns. Even in garbage time, they just didn't have him on the field. And I don't know if it's one of those things where there's been like questions about his effort, starting back at minicamp. He doesn't tackle well. He's smaller. I think it's just a whole confluence of issues. And if he can't get on the field in the fourth quarter of a blowout against the Browns, I just don't know when they're going to trust him to put him out there. I did look up Christian Gonzalez, the other cornerback that I know a lot of people are high on. I know he hasn't necessarily been, lighting the world on fire either. So it's not one of those things where you missed out on a superstar at least. But Emmanuel Forbes has not looked like the first round pick we were promised.
Yeah, I remember when you guys drafted him, I was like, ooh, that was spicy, because a lot of people in the Ravens community were boosting Forbes and liking, his ball hawking nature. And it was like a sneaky pick, right? Gonzalez is sexy, right? Like he has the perfect, hips. He does the perfect footwork. He covers well, but like some of his surrounding statistics weren't as good. He's doing okay. Like, I don't think he's been like as fall off the table, obviously, as Emmanuel Forbes, but yeah, this is pretty nuts and kind of a sad outcome. He was such a good gambler and such a good interception artist, and now like can't even get on the field. And it makes me wonder if like the level of like he just hasn't adjusted this level of play and like recalibrate his gambling, which was one of his like greatest assets. But man, it's crazy how like you miss on Forbes potentially, you missed on Dotson, you already threw him out, right? Send him to a divisional rival, no less. Like clearly, like you think he's dog water. So like, and then you go draft one guy, the second overall pick, and the whole team turns around. I mean, I know it's not just one guy, but it's crazy how like one good, like amazing hit at quarterback can really turn around a franchise, and then kind of make this offensive misfit toys because of missed on draft picks. Like De'Ami Brown was a high draft pick too, and no one, he didn't do anything, and now suddenly he's catching bombs, right? Like, just kind of like crazy how the turnaround has begun. What about your offensive line? Like that's, I think, the missing part. Like I know your other pieces because of fantasy football and all that good stuff, but like offensive line, how's that looking?
Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely admit that I'm not as in tune with the specifics of the offensive line as much as the other position groups, but it's been good in the sense of they're able to keep Jaden upright, but a lot of that is Jaden can escape, right? So he's able to hide some of their flaws. Washington's been rushing decently well. Like I said, I don't think it's anything crazy special, but Eckler has come in and really, even in the rushing game, not just the receiving game, he's just a big burst of energy. So I think it's something where the offensive line is playing, well enough to basically be like, all right, we can open up some holes for the running backs. Jaden's able to cover up any sort of deficiencies where he's like, all right, coverage broke down. I can spin out of this. I can keep my eyes downfield for at least a little bit. Okay, I can just take off. So not knowing the ins and outs as much as another football nerd might about the offensive line, I would say just watching them play, it's kind of one of those things where average play, and then Jaden helps them look better with how good he is and how dynamic he is.
Well, I think also it just kind of shows, like you're saying, how well Daniels has been doing. I mean, that's reflected the offensive line, right? How you have three running backs who are having success in this offense. Brian Robinson has been off to a great start this year. Eckler's been doing well, like you said, and then he was out with a concussion for a little bit, and then Jeremy McNichols comes in and makes some big plays. So, I mean, I have also I have not been watching your offensive line terribly closely, but I'm watching games as closely as the Ravens, so I can't. But yeah, I mean, I think you look at that, and that all starts with the offensive line, right? So that to me has been a big strength for you guys. But we've been talking your team up so much, right? And I know you've said a little bit, where you're holding the brakes down a bit to not get your expectations through the roof. But yeah, I mean, when you look at this offense, what do you think the weaknesses are? I know that there's been some talk that Daniels has been maybe a little overly aggressive at times. I think there was one play in particular against Cleveland where he tried to fit the ball in to a receiver who was covered in the end zone against Cleveland. That ended up in a pick. What are the things that that the Ravens defense might be able to give him some fits on?
I think overall he's been, and this is like, it's easy to compare to previous quarterbacks and regimes. He's been fairly protective of the ball when you look at other offenses, but I think it's still one of those things where he's still a rookie. He always says in his interviews he doesn't feel like he has to be the savior, but I imagine there's still some of that where he's like, yeah, I got to come in and like really elevate the franchise and my play. And does that lead to some of those poor decisions where you're trying to fit into a tight window? I haven't seen many throws where it's egregiously bad. I think one other thing that is, I mean, he's very dynamic. I honestly, like, all these rushing totals, I didn't frankly expect to be this high coming into the season. Just not expecting him to be so good at getting out of pressure. So it's one of those things where I know, the Ravens have some dogs up front. So it's going to be one of those things where he will be tested, and hope is a dangerous drug, right? So it's like, this could be a game where you come in and the Ravens expose the Commanders for who they are, right? The Ravens are like, we are still better. Like, you are the little brothers of the DMV, get out. So that's still certainly possible. And it's something where, there's always that worry. But as far as the other pieces of the offense where maybe you're able to slow down, I think it's one of those things where you have enough dynamic players in the back end as well where, okay, is Zacchaeus going to be able to get open? Is De'Ami Brown actually going to be able to burn some of the secondary? With the way the Ravens have played this year, possibly, yeah. But that's also not what I expected coming into the season. So I am curious, honestly, to see, how do the Ravens defense handle it? Is it more so where the pressure up front is going to have to try and make him uncomfortable? Are you going to have to get pressure with four people so that he spins out and then, I don't know, somehow contain him so he can't just run like Lamar? But, you've seen Lamar do it too, where, you think he's dead in the water. He stiff arms his dude to the ground and then throws as he's running out of bounds a touchdown. And so I think it's one of those things where Jaden Daniels has that confidence somehow already. And he plays with, I mean, it's not even like swagger. He just kind of plays like he's been there before. He just looks comfortable, and it's wild to me because he's a rookie and he shouldn't look that comfortable. So all that to say, I don't know. I think it's going to have to be pressure up front and some sort of contain to make him uncomfortable, or, really like rattle him in a turnover early, because he hasn't committed too many turnovers and they've been later in games when he has. So
yeah, I saw the 2 picks and I kind of wondered to myself, like, if the offensive line can get got, I imagine, I don't know, like, part of me is like, oh, they're going to probably do some like exotic pressure looks and try to like confuse him. And I think that'll definitely happen. But part of me also thinks they're going to just be like, we got 4 guys who can rush well, like you said, we got some dogs, and then we're going to like, have 7 guys in coverage, and good luck, good luck with all our corners and safeties being able to pass on us. So we'll see. I really don't have a good pulse on this game. I just feel like maybe that's my question for you. What's your yak like? Like, do you guys get a lot of yak?
No.
See,
that'd be
because Daniels is throwing the ball so pinpoint accurately on the deep throws. They don't need it.
A lot. I mean, so that is part of it. And then you have people like, I mean, I guess so Eckler gets yak, but like Zach Ertz catches the ball and like rumbles for a yard or two and falls down. But I guess, Eckler looks explosive. right? Like I said earlier, I mean, he looks good.
That's good.
But there are other throws where he's kind of throwing some of these 50, 55-yard bombs, or some of them, he's been pretty impressive with outside the number throws. And some of those are longer routes. Some of those are, 12, 13 yards, but they're getting pushed out of bounds or stepping out of bounds. So there honestly aren't a lot of opportunities where somebody's like running up the seam and then they get the ball and, in the middle of the defensive coverage and they're able to add on another, 12, 15 yards. That's not a lot of what they've been doing. I think maybe what that came from is they were trying a lot of those shorter throws in the first couple of games. And people are like, what are you doing? Like, you're just throwing 4 screens to Terry this game. They're like, that's not going to do anything, like open up the offense. Yeah. So I wonder if it was one of those things where they basically found that, we're not getting any yak. We need to try something a little bit more exciting. And I think that's where there's been some success from that. I'm trying to think of, I guess Noah Brown. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I mean, he's also just had like bigger plays where it's been, I guess the ADOT seems much higher. So yeah, not so much yak.
That's interesting. What about Bobby Wagner? That's a big name on your defensive side.
Yeah, Bobby Wagner. So somebody, I was listening to another podcast and they described, I believe Bobby Wagner's leading the team in tackles, just kind of like the defensive field general. Yeah. Having him there is obviously a huge presence, as you well know as Ravens fans, having a reliable middle linebacker who's been around and, still has elite play is obviously a huge advantage. They're kind of saying like Bobby Wagner is like, I forgot what they said, but it's just something along the lines of like, he's there, he's seasoned, and Frankie Louvu is just an absolute menace who has like no filter, no, like nothing to slow him down. And it's kind of a really good 1-2 punch in the middle right there. Bobby Wagner just looks, I think, solid, like just very good. What do you kind of expect him to be coming in as a veteran, having all that experience? And maybe that's something that's kind of helped the last 2 games where he's been able to settle people down and maybe give more advice on, where people need to be. There's been just less coverage breakdown the past 2 games. Like I said, I think with the Browns it's because they're not quite as good and Deshaun Watson can't throw an accurate ball. But I was surprised that the Cardinals weren't able to put up more points and kind of make it a more back and forth affair. I was very worried about that, right? Marvin Harrison, Michael Wilson, just other people, Trey McBride, just being able to kind of run riot on the defense. And I think that's also just what I've been conditioned to expect. So maybe that also has something to do with it. I don't know. I had to look up what we're allowing for third down conversion. I know it's a lot less than usual. I know what we're converting, but for defensively, I don't have that exact stat. But it was one of those things where every time you watched a Washington game, it'd be 3rd and 12, and you would still just somehow assume the other team was going to convert. So that was pretty depressing. But those days are at least over for a little bit.
Yeah, I'm looking at your defense, and there's some guys I like. Like, I like some of the names. I mean, I'm curious how the rookie Mike
Sandstro.
I can't remember how to say his name. How he's looking. I'm him in the draft process. Jeremy Chin. So just like there's like some names where I'm like, this could be something. I mean, obviously they might be young, but
yeah, Mike Sandstro, Jeremy Chin, Benjamin St. Juste. They've all looked good. Like, and maybe like I said, maybe this is me not giving them enough credit, but they've looked good in coverage and in defense. They're not necessarily elite players. Well, they are elite players, and we're never used to having elite players on defense, at least recently. So I think even just them being good enough and Joe Witt maybe being able to come up with some better defensive game plans in the future, if that's able to just keep them around that middle of the NFL defensive ranking, is it something where they know they're not the best, but as long as they're not the worst, the offense always gives them a chance. Of course, then you're terrified, because 1 or 2 injuries to the offense can really wreck all your game plans and any sort of hope you have. But that can be said about, really any team and losing a superstar player or 2. So that's nothing to really, I guess, harp on in that sense.
Yeah, unfortunately so. Peter, I don't know if you have any other kind of questions for him before we go into bold predictions.
No, I think that was pretty good overview of this matchup, and yeah, all I can say is I'm excited for it. These games are always fun. I really wish this was a game that happened, at least every 2 years. I mean, I feel like this really would be primed to be a pretty good rivalry, but should be a good one, And it's always great when both teams are strong. That makes it even better. So
yeah, it's KJ, been a while.
It has. Gosh, I guess it. It might have been all the way back at 2012. I mean, because like you guys have had some good years too, but they haven't quite aligned with, when the Ravens and Commanders played.
Yeah.
So.
2012 game. Anyways, I mean, both sides can actually say that, right? Like that's kind of the thing that's funny about that 2012 game.
Yeah,
but
that was yeah.
But so KJ, we'll give you the first opportunity for your bold prediction and score prediction, but I'll give you this. Man, DFS is going to be licking their chops about this.
Yeah.
Over under a 52.5 with the Ravens favored by 6.5 points.
History says to bet the under, but my heart says no way.
Your heart says let's have fun.
Yeah, I know. 6.5 is kind of surprising. I get it's home field advantage, and it will be home field advantage because there will definitely be more Ravens fans there. But I think Commanders will show up way more than they have in the past. I don't know. I mean, I smashed plus 6.5, plus 7 earlier today. When I saw that, I was like, all right, which I've never had the confidence to do.
It is a surprisingly juicy spread.
I honestly thought it was going to be like minus 4.5, but
yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Like, it was a perfect spread for the Cincy game, but like that felt weird. Like 2.5 felt weird. And now 6.5 feels weird too. So I feel like Vegas is really playing some mind games right now.
Yeah, but I think Vegas also just respects Ravens and the fact that the Ravens have been good for a long time. And this is one of those things where it's like we could go in there and we could lose by 17, right? 21 and get absolutely exposed. That's certainly possible. I like to believe that won't happen, but I don't know if that's baked into that line somehow. Just the history of these two franchises. And trusting one way more than the other, maybe that's part of it. But the over under 52.5 is definitely exciting to see.
Yeah. So what do you think? You got a score prediction for us?
Yeah, I guess I'll start with bold prediction. I was gonna say I had one kind of half joking one, which I don't think I'll do, but I was gonna say Zach Ertz will get more yards than Mark Andrews, but I don't know if that's bold. I mean, trust me, I'm feeling the hurt too, man. I have him on my fantasy teams. Yeah, I don't think that. I mean, maybe that's a secondary one, but I would say my other bold prediction, and I never know if these are bold enough, even after I listen to you guys every week. I never know, but I guess my bold prediction will be that Jaden Daniels will pass for and run for more yards than Lamar. And quite frankly, I think he's going to need to do that if they win the game. So I don't know if that's bold enough, but...
Yeah, that for sure.
Okay. Because Lamar has been throwing for like 300-some yards and rushing for... I know Jaden's passing totals have been lower, but rushing he's been doing quite a bit like Lamar. So we'll have the tight end one can be secondary. And I guess for the sake of my fantasy teams, I hope it's not true.
Well, they could both eat, There's that world of opportunity as well.
Yeah, that's fair. Score prediction wise, let's see. I mean, like I said, my heart says over. Maybe I'll kind of pick a funky score. Let's go. Oh, I will say Commanders, right? Commanders win because when's the next time I'm going to be able to pick this realistically? So let's say the Commanders win 30-26. Nothing too crazy, but higher scoring. 30-28. 30-28. I'm sorry. 30-28.
All right. I was like, that's an interesting score. I'm here for it. It can be done.
It can be done. No, we'll do 30-28.
All right. Wow. Peter, what are you thinking?
28. Yeah, I mean, I almost want to say, this is an interesting one. It does feel a bit like a trap game, but I don't know if it feels like a trap game because the Ravens are coming off, a big, exhausting win from against a divisional opponent, or if it's because it just seems that, with rare exception, it just feels like the road team has won a lot in this series. Of course, there's been exceptions, but I mean, Washington's come in here and won on more than one occasion, and the Ravens have obviously won more than one occasion in Washington. And I just am also uncertain if the NFL has really caught up to the hot start that Washington has. But I am still going to pick the Ravens to win this game, just because I feel like the defense is going to be a little more focused in stopping the big play after giving up way too many in this game against Cincinnati. And I think if they're able to do that, as KJ mentioned, this offense not getting too much yak, that's going to shorten the drives for Washington, force them to settle for field goals a little more than touchdowns. So I'm going to pick the Ravens to win 23-16, just covering. And my bold prediction is Lamar, Henry, and Justice Hill each will eclipse 50 rushing yards. So after all the passing last week, we're going to get back to the rushing game that the Ravens love to do.
Wow, 50 plus each. Man, that was the part of my parlay that missed. I was so sad. I said over 25 yards for Justice Hill. And if I had just done his over-under, that was at 16 or 15, I would have hit because it was 17.
If you just picked every starting wide receiver to get 50 plus yards, that was the real move.
Yeah. if yeah.
Austin
just if
Seibert.
you just picked everything that happened, you would be a millionaire.
I know.
Just if.
Austin Seibert, perfect on the year. He hasn't kicked that much, but he's perfect.
Oh. Good
there you
note.
go.
But
Good
I mean,
note.
he doesn't have a crazy leg. But
Man, this is a tough one because, like, Kevin, I completely see the path where this is like a Ravens Detroit game last year. Not in the way that like you're exposed, right? Detroit was a good team, but like the Ravens just crushed you. Like it was just like a different, like it was a different kind of game than people expected going in. But the other part of me is like, man, like after against Cincinnati, like I thought that we matched up really well, and then it didn't work out that way. But I don't think you really have the tools. Like I don't think this team, like at least like Chase and Higgins are real dudes, right? Terry's a good, he's a dude, but like I'm not worried about the other wide receivers as much. They're not like
that's fair.
Dudes,
yes,
right. So I'm gonna say that the Ravens win this game as well, but like I think they're gonna cover just because of like the nature of it. I think I'm gonna just go back to the well. I do this every damn year. Like 27-17 feels like the right score. So
27-17.
Yeah, that's why I said last week too. For the, and I feel like that's
one of these games you'll be right.
Yeah, one of these games I'll be right. Right, like broken clock's right twice a day. So I'll do that, and then for the bold prediction, like I think we might be out of like Mark Andrews slander for bold prediction, but like I do think he's going to score a tutty. So maybe if I say like 75 in a tutty, like it's like a retro Mark Andrews game. Is that good enough?
I mean, yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if he scores a touchdown. I think it's still bold enough, but if he were to do it, I feel like at home against the Commanders is a great way to make a comeback.
Should have had a touchdown last week. Lamar just couldn't believe how open he was.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Really low pass.
Yeah. He was like, let me throw this at your shins.
And he was so mad about it too because he knew it was a touchdown. And then of course, like his doppelganger gets it, like because it was so over the middle and there's so much going on. I couldn't get a good idea on the helmet. And I was 88. Like, is that Mark Andrews? Yeah.
You're
and
like,
it's like, no, it's 88.
It's so close.
I know, off by one error.
Yeah.
Tough.
Oh, even just sorry. One more thing I was going to go back on was I didn't even think about this until we were kind of talking through some of the bold predictions. But do you think your defense going against Lamar Jackson or seeing him in practice is obviously a huge advantage? I didn't even think about that, right? In the sense that they're going against somebody who's very dynamic in practice, and Jaden Daniels plays very similarly. There might not be, within the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season, other teams maybe didn't catch on as quickly and weren't, game planning for that as much in practice. But I feel like that could actually be a pretty distinct advantage the Ravens defense has.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly possible. I didn't have a chance to look back as much as I wanted to, but you look at historically the Ravens since Lamar's come going against mobile quarterbacks. I think in 2022, Josh Allen had 80 rushing yards against the Ravens defense, but that was kind of an outlier. I mean, generally they're able to contain mobile quarterbacks historically since Lamar's come here. So I don't know if that's because Lamar's there or just because, they're well coached and have a lot of, good players there. But yeah, I mean, if Daniels is able to have his, the normal rushing games that he's been having at this level, he'll be in rare company as far as, quarterbacks who've been able to do that against the Ravens defense over the past 5-6 seasons.
Yeah, I am terrified to think what happens if he does not have that escapability. Because if that doesn't happen, I can see this offense slowing down real fast. So that would definitely be a concern.
I had that thought earlier today as well, Kevin, about like, oh, this is like a unique opportunity for the Ravens to actually play Lamar in a weird twisted way, right? Like it's like the first time that they actually can play a quarterback of a similar, with maybe some similar game planning pieces. So we'll see. I kind of agree with Peter where I'm like, it's really hard to draw a straight line. Like the defense is usually pretty solid, so like it's not that surprising if they do well against a mobile quarterback. They do well against insert adjective here quarterbacks usually. So yeah, I guess we'll see. But I think the one thing that's unique is I'm curious if you guys are seeing this yet, but usually with these quarterbacks, like you don't want to play man, right? You don't want to turn your back.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of makes the defense a little more one dimensional and having to use zone more. So yeah, I guess that's like my one takeaway.
Yep. Well, I'm excited to see what happens. Excited to go to the game with you guys, and it's gonna be a real fun one to watch. So
I'm thrilled to see you too, buddy. Are you gonna wear your Raven socks or what?
No, not this week.
Fair enough. Well, thank you for joining us on the show and giving some insights on ye old Commanders. And we'll be back next week to talk about what happens if we end up winning this game or not. Definitely going to be an interesting game. Hope that you already had tickets, because that's the other thing that's funny, right? Ticket prices were not always that high. It really exploded once Daniels became a dude. So yeah, we'll see how it goes, man. Definitely excited to see you. And if you guys are going to the game, let us know. Make sure to reach out to us. You can do so on Twitter at OneWinningPod, Threads at OneWinningPod, or email us onewinningpod@gmail.com. We'll be back next week. Go Ravens.